Yeah, welcome back. Many thanks for staying with us here on the show. Now, today is World Anti-Torture Day, and it's a day set aside to create awareness of the horrors of torture and galvanize support for thousands of people who have been victims of torture around the world. Amnesty International has reported on torture in 141 countries, and they're saying that torture is thriving because rather than respecting the law, many governments are either actively using torture or turning a blind eye. Africa, and for that matter Ghana, is not excluded from this worldwide phenomenon. In Ghana, various concerns have been expressed about prisons and police brutalities as means of ensuring law and order. Have in the studio the country director for Amnesty International, Robert Akoto Amorfo. So we have a quick conversation about torture. Robert, you're welcome.
Thank you.
So 141 countries that Amnesty International has done work in. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm looking at Ghana and thinking, we don't have such a record, do we?
We do. We have a lot of issues of torture in our country. It happens on various levels. If we take, for instance, the level of our security system, we have issues where we have people reporting that the police have brutalized them, have forced them to give information by beating them up or forcing them by torturing them or saying certain things to them.
Okay.
We have instances of where we have seen that police are controlling crowds and they use torturous means where they could have used more slow and more decorous ways of doing things. We have parents beating their children. I mean, saying all sorts of things.
Does that amount to torture?
Yes. Torture is inflicting pain or any form of pain on the person emotionally, physically, psychologically on the person.
But a lot of men have tortured a lot of women.
Exactly.
And Amnesty International should take all of those people on them.
Yes, and that is why we want to mark this day and
Right.
want to draw the attention of our government
Okay.
that there's a lot of work for us to do. We have a good human rights record, but there are these things that distract us sometimes.
Okay.
And we want our government to rise up and to the challenge and ensure that our international obligations are respected. We are signatories to the International Convention on the removal
Against
of torture. Yes, so then we need to ensure that we respect those obligations.
And I'm quite lost. And I ask whether we have these records of torture, because if you don't know the extent of the problem, then it becomes difficult to deal with the problem.
Yes.
Now, starting how to solve a problem is, or the first step to solve a problem is knowing the problem itself. What then is the evidence? I mean, apart from our choked prisons, for example, which we know, and we've been doing a lot about it here on JoyNews. We've been doing a lot of stories. Government is trying, but we've still seen that we still have choked prisons. Regarding torture, when it comes to interrogation, which is one of the issues that you have raised here, how do you even determine that someone went into interrogation and that they were tortured? What if the person isn't telling the truth? How does Amnesty International determine the presence of torture indeed?
Well, I mean, it's always one person's word against the other. I mean, there are methodologies that the police are expected to use to get information. Sometimes they go to using violence, which that is what we call torture. Okay. People are supposed to freely give information. You're not supposed to force them. So sometimes the person may not hit you, the person may not cut you, but the manner in which the person will speak to you is torturous. Okay. You know, imagine a little girl you are trying to get information from, and the police starts shouting at the person. Already, the uniform scares her, and then you go ahead to shout at the person. Then that is already breaking the person. So even sometimes people give evidence that are not true because they want to get out of the situation which they are in. That's true. So yes,
that's true. All right. So I'll get to exactly what you want government to do going forward. What Amnesty International wants government to do going forward. But I've seen this is your press statement, and in your press statement you talk about how the UN Special Rapporteur on torture visited this country in 2015 and spoke about what he saw in 2013. It says that the police and intelligence services continue to use torture and other ill treatment, particularly during the initial stages of interrogation. Does he indicate what kind? Like beating people? What kind of torture?
Yes, I mean, the rapporteur, especially in his report, mentions about how people give evidence of how the police shout at them, which is a very key thing, and force them to do things. Okay. And then also sometimes push them around. And they give evidence of seeing bruises on people in prison and in the cells, and then also the idea that people give evidence that the police has used all sorts of violence against them when extracting information from them.
Okay, now you're also Amnesty International, as I'm reading here, you say you welcome the steps taken by government to address the torture and ill treatment, but then you are also asking them, because of course we've ratified the optional protocol, which you mentioned earlier on, but then you're asking government to do more. Give us a list for us, exactly what you want government to do, and whether you think it's feasible government can do that.
Yes, we believe that government can do a lot of things, and we want to start basically with our justice system. One, we want the government to resource the legal aid system, because many people need these services so that they can access justice. Many Ghanaians can't afford the private legal services, so we depend on the government's legal services that they have. So once we have a strengthened justice system that we trust, we know that the police knows that if I have a lawyer with me in the presence there, he will not torture me, he will not force me to say anything. Another thing is that we need to put policies in place. We have signed the protocol, we have ratified the optional protocol. Now we need to put in place the policies that will ensure that if somebody has torture, the person is given the needed attention. Now our law does not clearly define torture properly, according to the international standards. So we want our government to include all the international mentions, including mental, physical, all of that in our law, so that we know that when somebody faces torture, it's not only limited to violence on the body or the physical pain, but all sorts of torture that we have.
No, that sounds good. That sounds good. But as to whether or not we'll see that happening in Ghana, you could have your own optimism, but some people will also have their own skepticism. You say finally that the case of the day is the assault on my colleague here. Latif Idris, what exactly do you intend to use the day to do about that case?
So we want to draw attention that delayed justice is denied justice. And we know that it has been 3 months now since the issue happened, and we've not seen any good progress on this case. He was tortured, it was clear in the evidence, in the video and all of that, and we are saying that we want the police to give us the report, and we want to know what happened. So that we're not always saying this because we want to shame the police. We want to help improve the system. What went wrong? Who made the wrong thing? Why did they do the wrong thing? So that together with civil society, we can help them improve the system so that we can go ahead with ensuring that people receive justice when they deserve it.
I'm sure you're well aware of how much we here at Multimedia have been doing to get to the bottom of this matter. I don't know if you followed up with the police and whether or not you've heard them say that they can't make out those who, the CCTV footage cannot be found. So they can't really make out those who actually did that to Latif. Have you heard of that? I'm wondering, what do you make of it?
I think it's quite unfortunate that that will be said. I mean, obviously there's evidence in video, so we will continue to.
He said they can't find the video.
Yes, so then we have. I mean, the videos that we have of him being.
We don't have the video of him being bitten. Now we've seen that he's been bitten. We can see from the doctor's report that he has a fractured skull. So we know, but the police don't. Well, they say they don't have the video from the CCTV. So the next step is
to sue. Because
but then who are you suing?
Because to sue the IGP to produce the person who did it. I mean, at the end of the day, he has evidence. He can show the people who did it. If he can show the people, then if he sues and he says that these and these are the people who did it, then the law can take its course. Because now if we are waiting for them and they are not giving us the evidence, then we can provide the evidence and ensure that the law takes its own course.
Well, the thing is that when he was being beaten, it was so difficult for him to see who was beating him. So that's another issue. It's very difficult to see who is beating. Now the police is saying that they don't have the CCTV footage. Do you think there's anything more that can be done?
Yes, there's something more that can be done. I mean, we can continue to interrogate with the police. If the police accept that, yes, there was a beating, at least.
Certainly there was a beating.
That would be a first step for us to start engaging them and saying that, look, if this thing happened, let's set up systems and structures to ensure it never happens again. This is not the first time it has happened.
That's right.
And so it means that it's a systematic thing that we need to address so that next time it doesn't happen to someone else.
Yes. What we do see in the video, by the way, what video is available is the gentleman that's not Latif actually.
Yes.
You see in the videos that there's a gentleman who is being beaten by a lot of police officers.
Exactly.
We don't know who that gentleman is, and I don't think that he's, that's the video I'm talking about. We don't know who that gentleman is, and I don't think he's actually come out to even talk about what happened to him. So then, but then we see all of these police officers on him, and it's not difficult to know who these police officers are, but we've not seen any action. Is this a case that perhaps Amnesty International can do something about, or you think that once the person hasn't come out to speak about his ordeal, there isn't much that can be done?
I mean, our role at Amnesty is to ensure that we call on government's attention to take action. If the person decides to take the police on, we can support the person to go through the process. But at the meantime, all we would be able to do is to ensure that we draw government's attention that this is wrong. It doesn't go by international standards, and therefore they must do something about it.
Which is what you're doing, and no good day to do so than tomorrow, which is World Anti-Torture Day. What else are you doing finally?
So we took an action. We all, in support of the day, we all blindfolded ourselves and tied ourselves up.
I see.
To stand in with them and take pictures and also show around the world that this is what people go through. And we stand with the people all around the world, and people who are the Rohingya people, the people in Syria, all the kind of people who are going through torture. We stand with them today.
Mr. Akoto Amwafo. He is the country director for Amnesty International. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
And we hope that torture around the world will stop. I mean, I'm saying that with a lot of skepticism, because governments, like we indicated in our intro, governments sometimes either culpable, they engage in torture because they want some sort of information one way or the other, or they turn the blind eye to it because of what they get from torture. But hopefully, if we keep talking about it, something good will happen.